Timing is everything, they say. That's something combat has in common with comedy. In comedy, you typically use a three-part structure. The first part is the setup. You present a situation like a termite walks into a bar and says, "Hey, is your bartender here?" That's a situation. Next comes the build. It's a development of the initial setup. A termite walks into a bar and says, "Hey, is your bartender here?" The bartender says, "Yeah." That's a development. The last part is the punchline. It's the twist, the sting. It's where you kind of use your audience's expectations against them. A termite walks into a bar and says, "Hey, is your bartender here?" The bartender says, "Yeah." The termite says, "Hey, great, I'll have some." We often use the same three-part structure in combat. Take fencing, for example. First comes the setup. Say you make a feint at your opponent's chest. That's a situation. Then comes the build. Your opponent parries cart. That's a development. Then comes the punchline, the twist, where you use your opponent's expectations against him. While he's parrying cart, you deceive the parry and hit him in the opposite line from where he thought the attack was going to be. In fencing, we call that a counter time. It's like a joke, but your opponent probably isn't laughing. In both cases, we don't deliver the punchline until the opponent has bought into the setup. He has to have time to develop his expectations. In combat, most people tend to assume that faster is better. And certainly if you're substantially slower than your opponent, that can put you at a disadvantage, especially if you let your opponent take the initiative. Action beats reaction. But it's also possible to fail because you're too fast. Here's the example I've seen, 100 times. Let's say Bob has a wicked quick 1-2. Now, for those of you who don't parler français, assuming your opponent is on guard in the high outside line, that's a feint to the high inside line to draw your opponent's parry, and when he parries, you disengage under the parry and hit him on the other side in the high outside line. It's a classic knee slapper. So Bob decides to do his wicked quick 1-2 against Clyde. Bob feints inside, but Clyde doesn't move. He doesn't parry, he just stays on guard with his high outside line closed. And when Bob makes the 2 of his 1-2, going back to the high outside line, that line is already closed because Clyde never opened it by parrying. Bob basically parries his own attack. Clyde just makes a thrust. The effect is much like a man who smashes his face into a locked door because he assumed it would open when he turned the knob. Now, the funniest part is after Bob receives the touch from Clyde, Bob says, "Boy, that Clyde is fast. He just parried my 1-2. The truth is, Bob didn't do a very good setup. He didn't allow Clyde enough time to develop expectations of an attack to the inside. This is why there's no competition for the world's fastest comedian. Now, probably, Bob practiced his wicked quick 1-2 in the mirror, maybe on a fencing dummy, greasing the groove until he got faster and faster and faster and faster. But not everybody gets a joke right away. Not everybody responds at the same speed. Bob should have tested his material before he made it part of his act. He should have worked his 1-2 against a wide variety of opponents so he could learn to adapt it to the response speed of his audience. And there are some people who just won't respond to your feint. They won't buy into the setup. If somebody doesn't laugh at your joke, either you're not telling it very well, or it's not their kind of humor. Speed and timing are closely related, but they're not quite the same thing. I look at it this way. Speed is mostly physical. Timing is mostly mental. Now, raw physical speed is most important when there's one simple cue and one simple response. But in martial arts, it's a little bit different. It's not just how fast you can do a move, but when do you do that move? Timing is being exactly where you need to be, exactly when you need to be there. And this has two parts, prediction and precision. Now, prediction comes from situational awareness, especially early pattern recognition. It tells you where you're going to have to go and how much time you've got to get there. Now, precision is about technical efficiency, knowing the shortest route to get where you have to go by the time you have to be there. It's easy to get someplace on time if you know enough ahead of time what time you have to be there. If I call you at 10 a.m. and say you have to be downtown by 10:05, and downtown is a 10-minute drive, you're not going to make it. But if I say, be downtown a week from today at 10:05, you have plenty of time, if you know how to get there. And that's where precision comes in. Here's what I mean. Suppose we're here in beautiful sunny Ithaca, New York, famous for its miles and miles of sandy beaches. Now, that's the green marker. For some inexplicable reason, we want to go to Chicago. Maybe we've got a blues deficiency. Anyway, I get in my car, and you get in your car, and off we go. This is my route. I've been to Chicago lots of times. I could drive it in my sleep, and I think maybe I have. I take the interstate. It's the most direct route, and I'm short on gas money. This is your route. You've never been to Chicago before, but you'll get there eventually. But who gets there first? You're driving twice as fast as I am, but I get there first because my route is more efficient. That's the difference between speed and timing. Now look, there's nothing wrong with speed. If you need to get someplace and you have a limited amount of time to get there, I recommend you proceed with all due haste. But there's more to speed than just, speed. Wild West comic Wyatt was not noted for being particularly quick on the draw. He's credited with saying, "Fast is fine, accurate is final." Now, all other things being equal, faster is better. But all other things are never equal.